Hey guys, it's Gwen. Welcome to my channel if you are new, and if you are returning, welcome back. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so, as it does help my channel to grow and helps YouTube to notice me just a little bit more and to push my videos out for others to see. Let's get on with these DIYs, Christmas DIYs for 2023. So for this first DIY, I found these really cute napkins that came in a pack of 2, and these came from the 99-cent store. Now the first thing I'm doing is taking one of those napkins. I'm creating some stuffed fabric Christmas trees. Now I really like the pattern or the fabric design on here, and I love the look of green sack or flower sack stripe. Personally, I really love that look. It has like the vintage look to it, and it looks very French country and farmhouse and all the goodness that I enjoy in my home. So the first thing I did was took a ruler, and I was gonna try and trace something out so I'd have a more precise looking tree that was more symmetrical. But since I couldn't find anything, I didn't feel like going to my computer and printing out like a template or anything like that. I just decided to eyeball it, just creating these triangles. So I did that with the help of my ruler. And make sure that you have your napkin folded over, because as I mentioned, these are going to be stuffed Christmas trees. So you're going to want to have 2 pieces of the fabric that are essentially going to be like a pillow. So after you trace out your triangles, then just cut it off or cut it out using your scissors. And you can separate the top, the pointy part, but I decided to just keep it the way it was. Just I figured, you know, I'm going to be gluing these pieces together anyway, so might as well just keep it attached. But you can do whatever you want when you are recreating these DIYs. So then I took my hot glue gun and decided to just run a thin line of glue to the edge. Now you want to make sure that you get enough on to where your fabric pieces attach, because once you start to stuff your trees with some pillow stuffing or polyfill, sometimes those seams will burst open if you don't have enough glue attaching those pieces together. And that did happen to me throughout this video. And that's an easy fix. You can easily get your hot glue gun and just add additional glue as needed. So once you have your fabric pieces glued down the edges, make sure that you leave an opening down at the bottom, because that is where you will be inserting the polyfill, fiber fill, or pillow stuffing. And then with the help of something pointy, you know, you want to make sure that you get as much of that polyfill into the pointy parts or the corners, just so that you don't have those areas like flopping over or being flat. So I used my pair of scissors because it's what I had handy right next to me, but just be careful, because it's easy to cut through the fabric if you're not careful. So if you could opt to use something different, a different tool, that doesn't have like a pointed edge, you might be better off doing so. But at the end, it all worked out, so it was fine. So here, as you can see, I did have to fix some of those seams that bursted open, as I mentioned. And then I continued to fill the trees, and just fill it to the capacity that you feel you need for it to be, you know, fluffy enough, without overdoing it, because you're going to have to seal it off down the bottom, and you don't want your seams, you know, bursting open again if you put too much fill inside of your trees. So just sort of gauge it, make sure that you have your polyfill sort of spread out evenly, making sure that you get them on every corner. And then once you have that part done, here I was just deciding on what I wanted to use for my base. So I had these handy potting seed starters or something like that. They're from the garden section. During the springtime, I just had those on hand. And that's what I decided to use as my base. But before we move on to that, I decided to just go ahead and complete that second tree, which I will be repeating the same steps as I did with the first. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this, and then we'll move on to the next step. When creating multiples of a DIY, which sometimes I do in my videos, I do like to do the same steps to each of the DIYs that I'll be making before I move on to the next step, if that makes any sense. But you know, it's up to you how you want to complete your project. I know some people like to complete like one DIY from start to finish and then move on to the next. But since I'm making a duplicate of the same DIY, I decided to just go ahead and complete the steps on both of the trees that I'm making. And that way, you know, when we move on to the next step, then we could just move on and, you know, complete the steps to each one. That way, you know, I don't have to go back and start over with a second DIY. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'm not sure if you guys agree and you guys work the same way as I do, but you know, as crafters, anything goes, and it's just whatever works for you in that moment. So let's move on to the next step. Here I took these sort of like wooden dowels. This I've actually had in my stash for quite some time. I got them from a thrift store, and they're part of like a DIY kit, and I just got them for the purpose of those wood pieces because I knew that they would come in handy for something. And lo and behold, I did find them in my stash, and I figured these are perfect for the tree trunk. So I decided to just stain them with a little bit of the Waverly Antique Wax. As you saw there, just used a wet wipe, and then I love using a wipe to apply my antique wax because it you know, acts as an applicator, and then it also removes the excess wax. So it's like a dual purpose. So once I was done sealing this up, and here you can see I use some of these clamps that came from Dollar Tree. I just used them to sort of help keep the glue together until they were fully dry. And then I took the dowel and just added the hot glue to the top of it as well as to the sides, and just inserted that into the opening. And then just seal your tree, the fabric, on all corners, making sure you add as much glue as needed to make sure that you have that closure, you know, in your opening. So here I'm just sort of pressing the fabric pieces down together, making sure that the fabric is adhered well. Next thing was to attach this to the base. I added some hot glue, and of course I wanted to add some Spanish moss just to finish off that look. So just take some Spanish moss, sort of separate them in your fingers, and then attach or glue down as much as you need to finish off your project and to give you that look that you want. Now, I personally really love the look of Spanish moss, especially when you're finishing off a project, especially when it comes to flower arranging, you know, making little floral arrangements and things like that, centerpieces, anything that you end up using flowers or, you know, some sort of like container or vase. It just sort of gives it that complete look, especially if you are using like a floral foam or any type of foam. You know, it helps to conceal like all the ugly, messy parts. So I really love the look of Spanish moss. But you can use green moss, reindeer moss, you know, regular floral moss if you prefer more of that green color. But I like the rusticness of the Spanish moss, and I think it balances well with this sort of like farmhouse, French country looking tree. So the next thing I did was added some of this berry garland in this dark red color. Now Dollar Tree carries a lot of different colored berry garlands, and they usually come out during, fall and Christmas. And I've had mine for quite some time in my stash as always. And I decided to go with this darker red because I really like the look of that, especially for Christmas. And again, adding to that whole rustic look. So all I did was just cut a strand or a piece of the berry garland and very simply wrapped around the trunk of the tree. So you just want to add a little bit hot glue in the starting point just to keep your garland in place, and then sort of, twirl it around maybe twice or 3 times, depending on the look that you're going for. And then just make sure that you add little drops of hot glue here and there, wherever you feel it needs for it to not move or to not fall off from your project. And that was it for the first DIY. I hope you guys liked that one. Let's move on to DIY number 2. And again, we're using the other napkin that came in that pack. So this time around, I decided I wanted to use it in a sign. I'm also using this chunky, sort of vintage looking frame that I've had forever, and decided to add a little bit of this DIY dark wax, or actually it's a black wax. I just use a wipe once again and then apply that to the inner frame. And, it adds a little bit more depth and dimension in this piece. I really thought about painting this whole entire frame. I wanted to go with maybe shabby chic or something like that, maybe make it white, give it the chippy look, but I held myself back because, I wanted to try and stay with this color tone. So I kept it the original sort of gold looking color it was, and taking some rub and buff in the color antique gold, just use my fingertips to apply a little bit on certain high points of this frame. Now, was it really necessary for me to do this? Probably not, because in hindsight, the frame itself was already gold. But I thought maybe it just might add a little bit more, I don't know, maybe just more oomph, if you will. But it looks good in the end. And again, I'm not sure if it really made much of a difference. But regardless, let's move on to the next step. I did take a scrap piece of this poster board. It's like a foam board that I had on hand. And that's what I'm going to use as my backing to place behind my frame and for my fabric piece to attach to something. It also gives it more stability. So this is not meant to be a permanent piece. So nothing here is really permanent. I can easily detach all my pieces and use this frame for a different project. So I wasn't too concerned with making sure the back looked perfect or it looked pretty or that all the pieces were fitted and in well together. That wasn't my goal here. My goal was just to make the front side of it look really nice and presentable and, fit in with my Christmas vibes and everything. So I took that fabric piece and just laid it across that foam board and then just hot glued the edges down. And again, I wasn't being precise or anything. I wasn't trying to make sure all the corners were tucked in or all the pieces were glued down. I just wanted it to be attached to the foam board enough to where it would hold up. So if I were to display this piece, it wouldn't, unravel. So just taking more hot glue, just continued on with this step here until everything was attached. And then here I was just sort of eyeballing and sort of gauging if I had the right sizing measured out for the frame, because I didn't want an overhang on the sides. So we were good on that end. So let's move on to the next step. I took this IOD stamp, and this is in the farmhand style. And I decided to go with the word joy. And originally I was going to stamped them to the middle, to the center, but decided that I wanted to, have like the off-centered look in case I wanted to use this to display like a wreath or bells or something like that down the middle. So I thought that would be something that I could potentially use as a background for another piece, like a layering piece. So after I had my word, onto my thin mount, I went ahead and stamped it on using some of the Stays On black ink. And then just make sure that when you're using these types of stamps that you have one hand pushing down over the stamps while you use the other to rub the letter down. So as you can see there, I had like this wreath ball on the left side because I was trying to see if that would look good. But you'll see in the end how I end up styling it. So that was it for DIY number 2. We're moving right along to the third DIY. So for this DIY, I used one of these white Christmas trees from Dollar Tree along with these packs of wooden sticks and this wood cup. This wood cup is meant to be like a pen holder, pencil holder. So it was perfect for a base for what's going to be a snow globe. So as you can see, I did add a big rubber band around that pencil cup. And that was just a means to hold all my sticks down into place until I figured out exactly, get the visual of how I wanted this to look. So I like to kind of do that. I was trying to hold all the pieces with my hand, but they all kept falling. So I figured just put a rubber band around it, add all the pieces and kind of take a step back and see if that's the look I was going for. So after I decided, sure, it looks good, let's move on. I decided, I'm gonna, like I said, I was gonna make this into a snow globe. And I was just sort of fussing with that tree to see if it would fit into this cloche. So here's a cloche from Dollar Tree. And you'll see what I end up doing to that in a minute. But going back to the wood base, I took this Home Decor, I think it's dark walnut stain. And just took a paintbrush and dabbed some over the bottom parts of the wood dowels. And then wiped them back with a wet wipe. Now, originally, my plan was to paint the entire wood pieces, but when I got to starting with painting just the bottom, I like the look of it. So I decided, I'm just going to stick with that. So here I moved on to the next step, and that is to hot glue down all my wood pieces. And this was really helpful. The rubber band was helpful in keeping all the pieces down. So what I did was just worked my way around the cup, one wood piece at a time, and just hot glued each of those down into place. Now, with the rubber band holding the pieces down, it didn't give me a straight, clean line where the stain was, but not to worry, I did plan on using a ribbon to, decorate the middle part. And this was just one of those burlap style ribbons. It's not wired. I just use hot glue to glue them down over the middle of the cup. And that was perfect for, concealing those imperfect lines. And it also adds that nice decorative embellishment, more texture to this piece. Okay, so now it's time to trim this tree. This tree was a little too tall for this cloche. Yes, it might have fit if I just scrunched down the cloche lid, but I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want the tree to be touching the top. So I did give this a little bit of a haircut, just taking my scissors, just cutting off that top layer. Actually had to use my wire cutters because there is that wire down the middle that's a little bit, thick. So I did cut off that top part right there. And then the rest of it, after I got the perfect height, I just took my scissors and just gave it a nice trim along the sides and just, making sure to stay at an angle and everything, just keeping with the whole look of, a tree silhouette. Once that part was done, it was time to fill the inside of this cloche slash snow globe. I used some of this iridescent snow. Again, I've had it in my craft stash, but you can find these at Dollar Tree, Walmart, any craft stores. I believe I got these from Walmart in the years past on clearance. These always go on clearance at the end of Christmas season. So that's a good time to pick up this kind of stuff for your holiday crafting. So what I did was just spread some hot glue over the base, that wood base, and then sprinkled the iridescent snowflakes over the hot glue, just making sure that you're covering the surface. And then you're going to want to hot glue your tree down to the center of your cloche. And then once you have that glue down, some of the wood base will be exposed, so you're going to also want to add more hot glue and continue to add more of that iridescent snowflakes just to cover up those areas. And as you can see here, I did add the lid just for reference and just to kind of see how it was all coming together. But I knew I wanted to add one last touch to the burlap ribbon, and I decided that I was going to add some greenery stems. But before doing so, I did want this to be secured. You can opt to not hot glue your pieces down permanently if you ever wanted to dismantle and redo your DIYs. But for this one, I think I would want to keep this for a decor piece for future years to come, or I might even gift this to someone. So then after attaching the cloche piece to the wood base, I took a couple sprigs of greenery, and these were just some leftover pieces that I like to hold on to whenever I am working with florals and greeneries. Anytime you have small pieces, just keep them around because you never know when you're going to need them for DIYs, such as this. So I essentially just took a small piece and just cut it to smaller pieces, just to create the size that I needed, just to add that little touch of green to this decor piece. And then the last thing I did was to add a mini pine cone to the center of the greenery stems. I love how this faux snow globe DIY came out. I think it will work well just for throughout the whole winter season, not just for Christmas. And I hope you guys liked it too. Let's take a final look at all of the projects from this video. I'm so happy with the outcome of these projects. They are super adorable, and as you can see from the DIYs, that these were so easy, doesn't take much time, and super budget friendly. I hope you guys enjoyed these ideas. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you in my next one. Thanks for watching.